hum of the airplane was steady, a background lull that comforted most passengers as they settled into their seats. For many, it was just another flight, another few hours in the air, before landing in their destination. But for one woman, a black woman sitting quietly by the window in row 14, this flight would become something no one on board would ever forget. She wasn't loud. She wasn't seeking attention. In fact, her eyes had closed minutes after takeoff, her head leaning softly against the window as the world outside turned into endless sky. To anyone glancing her way, she was just another traveler catching some rest. But destiny had other plans. Because halfway through that peaceful journey, a voice crackled over the intercom. The captain, usually calm and collected, sounded shaken, his tone carrying an urgency that immediately unsettled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, pausing as though choosing his words carefully, "we are experiencing a situation. If there is any fighter pilot on board, please make yourself known to the crew immediately." The passengers froze. Whispers rippled down the aisles, fear tightening the air. A fighter pilot? Why would a commercial flight ever need one? Some clutched their armrests. Some reached for their phones, though there was no signal this high above the earth. All eyes darted nervously around, searching for someone, anyone, who might fit the description. But no one moved. No one raised their hand, until... The woman in row 14 stirred, slowly opening her eyes. She had been quiet the entire flight, unnoticed, almost invisible. Yet now, something in her gaze shifted. A steel-like determination, flashing through the calm. The plane had no idea who she really was. Her name was Alicia Carter. To the world on that flight, she was just another passenger. But Alicia's story was far from ordinary. Born and raised in Atlanta, Alicia had grown up in a family that knew the meaning of service and sacrifice. Her father had been a mechanic for the Air Force, her mother a school teacher who drilled into her the value of discipline and integrity. While other kids played with dolls or dreamed of movie stardom, Alicia spent her afternoons gazing at the sky, watching the jets roar overhead from the nearby base. She didn't just want to fly, she wanted to master the skies. At 17, she applied for the Air Force Academy. Many laughed. A young black woman, petite in stature, dreaming of becoming a fighter pilot in an arena still dominated by men? To some, it sounded impossible. But Alicia thrived where others doubted. She pushed through grueling training, memorized every instrument, every maneuver, every emergency drill until it was muscle memory. By 26, she wasn't just a pilot. She was one of the few women, and even fewer black women, trusted to fly some of the most advanced fighter jets in the world. But her career wasn't just medals and recognition. It was also sacrifices. She had missed birthdays, holidays, and family reunions. She had endured whispers from peers who underestimated her, superiors who doubted her, and strangers who refused to believe that she, a quiet, soft-spoken woman, could command the skies. And so, on this particular day, Alicia wasn't traveling in uniform. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair pulled into a simple bun, hoping to blend into the crowd. She was returning from visiting her younger brother, who had just started college in Chicago, heading back to her base assignment across the country. The flight had been smooth at first. She had smiled politely at the flight attendant, tucked her small duffel bag beneath the seat, and leaned against the window to catch some much-needed sleep. For Alicia, flying as a passenger was rare. Usually she was in the cockpit, hands gripping controls, eyes locked on the horizon. Sitting back and letting someone else fly was still strange to her. But as the captain's trembling voice filled the cabin, Alicia's rest was broken. Her eyes opened instantly, the training ingrained in her bones overriding the civilian calm she had tried to adopt. She glanced around the cabin. Panic was spreading like wildfire. A mother clutched her baby tighter. An older man whispered prayers under his breath. A teenager tapped nervously on his armrest, trying to mask his fear with restless energy. No one else knew what to do. No one else could possibly respond to the captain's plea. And Alicia realized she was the only one on this plane who could. Her heart pounded, but not with fear, with resolve. Years of training had led her here, though she had never imagined it would happen at 30,000 feet in a commercial airliner, surrounded by civilians who saw her as just another face. She pressed her palms together, took a slow breath, and whispered to herself words her father once told her. "When the skies call you, don't hesitate, answer." The captain's voice came again, more desperate this time. "If there is any fighter pilot on board, please, we need you in the cockpit immediately." Alicia unbuckled her seatbelt. Heads turned as the woman from row 14 rose to her feet. The passengers around her blinked in surprise. Who was she? Why was she standing? She didn't say a word. She simply walked down the aisle, her steps steady, her gaze unwavering. The flight attendant, startled, rushed toward her. And then, with quiet certainty, Alicia spoke for the first time since boarding. "I'm a fighter pilot. Take me to the cockpit." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Some passengers leaned forward in disbelief, others exchanged doubtful glances. A fighter pilot? This quiet woman in a sweatshirt and jeans? To them, she didn't look like someone who had spent years commanding roaring jets at supersonic speeds. One man scoffed audibly. "Yeah, right. She's no pilot. This isn't a movie." But Alicia ignored him. She had heard those doubts all her life, and she wasn't about to waste time convincing strangers. Every second mattered. The lead flight attendant studied her closely. There was something in Alicia's voice, a calm authority that couldn't be faked. Without hesitation, she nodded. "Follow me." As Alicia walked toward the cockpit, whispers chased her down the aisle. Some passengers clung to the hope that maybe she was telling the truth. Others feared that if she wasn't, their lives were in even greater danger. When the cockpit door opened, Alicia saw it immediately, the reason for the captain's desperate plea. On the radar screen, 2 fast-moving blips were closing in. Another aircraft was flying dangerously close, its trajectory erratic, unpredictable. The captain's face was pale, his co-pilot visibly trembling. "It's a rogue jet," the captain explained, his voice strained. "It's shadowing us, cutting across our path. ATC says it's not responding to signals. We've tried everything. We need someone who knows combat maneuvers, someone who understands how these jets behave." Alicia stepped closer, scanning the instruments with the sharp eye of someone who had lived in cockpits more complex than this. She recognized the pattern instantly. Whoever was flying that jet wasn't a rookie. They were skilled, almost taunting the commercial plane, circling dangerously close, enough to cause panic but not yet colliding. "This isn't random," Alicia said firmly. "They're testing you. They want to see how you react." The captain swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" Alicia took a deep breath. She wasn't at the controls of her F-22. She didn't have her headset, her squadron, or her weapons. She was in a commercial cockpit, with hundreds of innocent lives behind her, and only her training and instincts to rely on. "We can't outfly them," she explained, "but we can outthink them. I'll guide you. Trust me." The captain hesitated. The lives of every soul on board hung in the balance. Then he nodded. "You're in charge." Behind them, a flight attendant gasped. "Wait, you're really—" "Yes," Alicia said, her voice steady as stone. "United States Air Force, call sign Falcon." Her presence shifted the air in the cockpit. Doubt faded. Determination took its place. She grabbed the radio and barked commands to the crew. Her tone sharp and precise. "Lock down the cabin. Secure all passengers. No distractions." Then she leaned forward, eyes glued to the radar. The rogue jet swooped closer, turbulence rattling the plane. Screams erupted from the cabin. Alicia clenched her fists but stayed focused. "Hold steady," she ordered the captain. "Do not climb. Do not dive. They want you to panic." "Don't give them that." The co-pilot's hands shook on the controls. Alicia placed her hand gently over his. "Breathe, trust me. I've flown tighter formations at twice this speed." Another near miss, the rogue jet streaked past the window, so close that passengers caught a terrifying glimpse of its silhouette. A child began crying. A woman shouted prayers. Fear spread like wildfire. Back in the cockpit, Alicia's mind raced. Whoever was in that jet was skilled, but reckless. And if they miscalculated, even by a second, this plane full of innocent people could be destroyed. The captain muttered, "Why us? Why now?" Alicia's jaw tightened. "Because they didn't know I'd be here." The cockpit trembled as another violent wave of turbulence jolted the aircraft. Passengers screamed in terror, some clinging to strangers for comfort. The rogue jet swooped across the nose of the plane again, flashing like a predator circling its prey. Inside the cockpit, the captain's hands were slick with sweat, the co-pilot's knuckles white from gripping the controls. Alicia, however, sat forward in her seat, eyes unblinking, her breathing steady. She wasn't just watching the rogue jet, she was reading it. "They're baiting you," she said calmly, "trying to make you swerve into a mistake. If you panic, they win." The captain shot her a look. "Win? Who are they?" Alicia's eyes narrowed as the jet rolled upside down, flying parallel for a split second before darting away. It was a move she recognized instantly. Too precise. Too sharp? That's no amateur, she said. That's military training. The realization settled like ice in the cockpit. The rogue jet wasn't just some reckless civilian joyrider. It was someone who knew the maneuvers Alicia herself had trained with. Another sharp dip rattled the cabin. Oxygen mask swung free, though not yet deployed. A terrified voice crackled over the intercom from the lead attendant. Passengers are panicking. What should we... Tell them to stay calm, Alicia interrupted, her tone slicing through the chaos. And keep them seated. This is under control. But inside she knew it wasn't. Not yet. Grabbing the radio, Alicia flipped to an emergency channel only fighter pilots knew. Her voice sharpened into command. This is Falcon, United States Air Force. Identify yourself immediately. For a long moment, only static filled the air. The rogue jet held formation outside the left wing, almost mockingly close. Then a distorted voice crackled back. Well, Falcon. Didn't expect to see you here? Alicia's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. It was Lieutenant Marcus Kane, a disgraced pilot who had been dishonorably discharged after ignoring orders during a classified mission. He had always blamed Alicia for testifying against him. Kane, she muttered, fury in her voice. You're endangering hundreds of innocent lives. Pull away now. His bitter laugh echoed in her headset. Why would I? You took everything from me, Falcon. My career, my honor. Now I'll take something from you. The rogue jet dove, slicing dangerously under the commercial plane, causing luggage bins to pop open and shrieks to erupt in the cabin. Alicia tightened her grip on the radio. This isn't about me, she snapped. These people have nothing to do with your failures. Stand down, Kane. But Kane only roared back, make me. The captain turned, panicked. What do we do? He could take us down. Alicia's mind raced. She couldn't engage Kane without weapons. She couldn't outmaneuver him in a bulky commercial airliner. But there was one thing she could do, outthink him. The captain hesitated. One wrong move and it could all be over. But Alicia's voice carried the weight of experience. The kind that only came from years at 30,000 feet in combat zones. Do it, she ordered. The captain nodded. On your mark. Alicia locked her gaze on the rogue jet outside. Kane was circling back, lining up for a scare pass across the nose. He thought he controlled the board. He thought she was just a pawn. But Alicia Carter had never been anyone's pawn. 3, 2, 1, now! The engines throttled back. The plane lurched, passengers screaming as if the plane had suddenly lost power. Kane dove in for the kill, but overshot as Alicia predicted. Full thrust! Dive 5 degrees now, she barked. The captain slammed the throttle forward, the jetliner dipping under Kane's path, then leveling back. For the first time, the massive passenger plane was directly behind the rogue jet's tail. Gasps of disbelief filled the cockpit. Alicia smirked coldly. Checkmate. For a split second, the sky seemed to freeze. The massive airliner, a machine never designed for combat maneuvers, now sat locked on the rogue jet's tail. Kane's voice crackled over the comms again, no longer mocking but laced with shock. You put that plane behind me? Alicia's voice was ice. I told you, Kane, I don't miss. Now disengage before you leave me no choice. Passengers who had braced for disaster began noticing the sudden calm in the aircraft's movement. The plane wasn't lurching anymore. The violent shakes had stopped. The crew moved quietly through the aisles, whispering reassurance, though most still had no idea what had just happened. They could sense something had shifted. Control had returned. In the cockpit, Kane's jet wavered ahead. He dipped slightly, circling as if reconsidering. His arrogance had fueled this dangerous stunt. But Alicia knew the truth. Kane wasn't suicidal. For all his bluster, he wanted revenge, not a fiery end in the clouds. This isn't over, Falcon, he spat, though his voice cracked under the weight of his own fear. Yes, it is, Alicia replied. She transmitted on a secondary channel. ATC, this is Falcon. Rogue jet identified. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, dishonorably discharged. Coordinates locked. Scramble escort immediately. A sharp acknowledgement came back. Ground control had been waiting for confirmation, and now fighter jets were already en route to intercept. Kane must have realized it too. He let out a frustrated growl through the comms, then broke away, banking hard to the east. Within seconds, he was a shrinking dot against the horizon. Alicia exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. She turned back to the captain. Maintain course. The escorts will handle him. Your passengers are safe." The captain, still gripping the controls, looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. You just saved 300 lives." Alicia's gaze softened, but her tone remained firm. "I just did my job." When the cockpit door opened and Alicia stepped back into the cabin, silence fell. Every passenger who had doubted her, whispered about her, or dismissed her when she rose from her seat now stared in awe. The man who had scoffed earlier, the one who had sneered, "She's no pilot," dropped his eyes in shame as she passed. Mothers clutched their children tighter, whispering gratitude. A young boy near the front whispered loud enough for others to hear, "She's a hero." But Alicia didn't pause for applause. She simply returned to her seat in row 14, buckled her belt and leaned against the window once more. The plane settled into smooth flight, the clouds parting to reveal the golden stretch of afternoon sky. Hours later, when they landed, law enforcement and Air Force personnel were waiting at the gate. Reporters swarmed as word of the in-flight incident leaked. Passengers eagerly told the story of the quiet woman who had stood up when no one else could. Alicia Carter's name was spoken with reverence, not just as a pilot, not just as a woman, but as a protector who carried dignity, calm, and courage at 30,000 feet when hundreds of lives hung in the balance. As she stepped off the plane, a little girl tugged at her sleeve. Alicia bent down and the child whispered, "When I grow up, I want to fly like you." Alicia smiled, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "Then remember this," she said gently. "Don't ever let anyone tell you what you can't do. The sky belongs to you too." That day, the world learned a lesson it wouldn't forget. Never judge a person by their appearance, their silence, or the color of their skin, because sometimes the one you overlook is the one who saves you all. And for Alicia Carter, fighter pilot, protector, and hero, the skies had never felt more like home. What would you do if you were on that plane? Would you have trusted her when she stood up?